hearing Alpha Centauri. So that's where you're from. Alpha Centauri. Do you know much about Alpha Centauri, or
Heard the name.
heard the name before? Okay, yeah, they kept telling me loud and clear Alpha Centauri. I'm like, okay. So I'll kind of fill you in on some of the history. Alpha Centauri, and you are a first wave volunteer like I am. You were born, I think, 3 years after me. So you're what we would call Dolores Cannon calls the waves of volunteers. You're a first wave, so that means you were born between 1957 or 1947 rather, and through the mid 1960s. You fall in that category. Your main purpose here is to be a way shower. You're here to kind of shine the light on what needs to be changed, and to be an example to, the other star seeds that are coming in after us. We'll explore that a little deeper as we go into the reading. Alpha Centauri is actually a star system that's located very close to our current solar system. So it's probably one of our closest neighbors. So it makes sense that, you coming from there, you would be one of the first ones to come here, during the time that we needed the waves of volunteers. And this probably explains a lot why you feel so disconnected right now, why you don't feel like you belong here, why things seem kind of strange to you. Now, with Alpha Centaurian star seeds, they fall into one of two categories. I don't get a lot of you guys, but every now and then I get a few of you. So you're not, like, I would say, as common as Sirians or Pleiadians. And I think it's just because that Alpha Centauri is a smaller star system. What I see as far as, the two categories is you all either fall into the technology category or you fall into the creative category. Alpha Centauri is a highly technological society. They're extremely technologically advanced. As far as what the beings from there look like, they look pretty much like us. They look human. So, if you were to see an Alpha Centaurian walk down the street, you probably wouldn't be able to tell that they were extraterrestrial. They look like us. I think there might be some slight differences. I think they might be a little taller, or maybe a little more, because they are operating in higher dimensions, so I would say they're predominantly fifth dimensional people, so, they do operate in higher dimensional realities. So there might be some differences that you might, if you looked hard enough, could see. But for the most part, Alpha Centaurian people were, like the Pleiadians and the Sirians, were descendants of Lyran refugees. I think they went through their own kind of evolution to where I think they were traveling through several different, and some of this I have to kind of see for the first time because I'm not, as familiar with their history, but some of them had to travel quite a bit to get to where they were. I think that's part of the reason why the technology aspect with them is very, very strong, because they had to have high technology to come from such a far place. All right. What I find with a lot of Alpha Centaurians that come here to Earth, they tend to do very well in third dimensional reality because of their close proximity to Earth. So they tend to be able to do well with, getting a job or, integrating themselves as far as on a superficial level into the social structure here. They tend to know that they're from somewhere else. They just know it. It's just like, yeah, this is close to home, but it's not home. What do you do for a living in this life, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm basically property maintenance and custodial at a school. So my husband and I do it together, and we do everything: grounds, maintenance of the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
It's very physical,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm looking to shift into something more aligned with
spirituality.
Who I really am. And I know that I've sort of been hiding. For whatever reason, I never felt safe being really open about who I am.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you say you work in a school system, because I do see that as a trend with some Alpha Centaurians. And I think a lot of it is because as a society, they were very concerned for social equality. I think what I tend to see with a lot of Alpha Centaurian souls is they tend to either be teachers or be connected with a school of some sort, because what better to start instilling learning about, equality than when the children are still young. So there is kind of maybe a indirect purpose in that sense. For instance, one of my aunts is she's an Alpha Centaurian soul, and she taught as a preschool teacher for a long time, and she always feels very strongly about all the children being able to develop into their gifts regardless of what their background is, whether they're Hispanic or African American or whatever. I'm not sure if that's a theme that comes up with your life, but I do see this desire to be shifting into something different. I think probably the job itself that you described is very physically hard. We're not getting any younger, and it's time to go into something different. Part of this desire to go into different work is also to reconnect yourself with who you truly are and where you came from. Now, here's something interesting. There is probably a reason why you feel like you need to kind of hide who you are. I remember reading someplace that the Alpha Centaurian star race actually contacted our government at one point, and they offered their assistance with technology. But our government wasn't interested in technology that could help benefit people, like free energy and things like that. They were more interested in weaponized technology, okay? The Alpha Centaurians weren't interested in getting involved with that, so they canceled the contract. We're not going to help you kill each other, you know what I'm saying? So they just didn't see the high integrity in that, so they backed out of the contract, and our U.S. government ended up making a contract with the gray aliens instead. But what was interesting is that our government did receive the technology from the gray aliens, but they didn't receive any instruction manuals. They just got like, oh, well, here's you guys figure it out. So it's taken them, decades to try to reverse engineer these things. And to this day, they still don't really have it right, So they got kind of a raw deal. They should have gone with the Alpha Centaurian deal. I think they would have been much better off. But that's our government for you. They want what they want, and they want a means to be able to control people, not to help people. Yeah, so the Alpha Centaurians, I think, didn't want any part of that. It's like, if you guys aren't evolved enough to want a better society for your people, then we don't want to help you. How this relates to you is, I think you feel that if you came out to be a starseed, that you wouldn't be accepted. And you are a starseed, it's pretty obvious. In that, people are going to think you're strange or weird, or, people are going to judge you no matter what you do. So, I might as well do what makes me happy. And if they come around, great. If they don't, oh well. I'm seeing you kind of in the precipice of really discovering who you truly are. And I do see kind of a creative aspect with you, though. I mean, even though you've worked in a very non-creative field, but maybe in a way you said you did maintenance of landscaping and things like that as well, or?
Yeah, we do some landscaping. We've made some creative projects like, a Christmas store. We took an old office trailer and turned it into a caboose from a movie, the Tom Hanks movie. So we do some creative stuff. My husband's super creative. I don't know which category I'm in, honestly, because I have loved technology, and I was going to school to be an engineer, and then got disheartened because I'm not going to stop. I was meditating even back then in my 20s, and I realized I'm not stopping them from taking something wonderful and using it in a harmful way. There's no guarantee I can stop that. And so I changed gears and got into alternative healing. But then really didn't have what it took, or confidence, I suppose, to trust my gifts in that field either. And so I felt like a weirdo, I guess, and wasn't able to just make a niche for myself, and had too many of my own issues too.
I understand.
That got in the way of it. And so I recently took a Reiki class, and I'm considering getting back into that, because ultimately I see society needs to heal before we can get back to everything more technological. And I believe in so much. I've always felt this planet was so primitive, and there was so much more possible, and I was frustrated even as a kid that we didn't have more. So what you're saying so far, I can relate to.
It's interesting that you almost went into technology, into some sort of technological field, because a lot of Alpha Centaurians, I think, feel very comfortable in, working in technology. But how interesting that you didn't want to continue it because you were afraid the technology was going to get into the wrong hands. And that's exactly what the Alpha Centaurian race encountered. They offered their assistance to our government, our U.S. government. I think inherently you knew that if I build something, I don't know if it's going to be used for good or bad because this society isn't quite at that point yet. And it's interesting, as a kid, even then you kind of felt like, wow, this is a really primitive place, it's because you came from this society that had, everything, you guys had all the, high technology. You had everything. It was a highly evolved society. And then you come here and it's like, damn, these people are really primitive. They don't have this, they don't have that. And it's because, the government is held back. We could have had free energy, by now. There's quite a few people that in the past, Tesla included, that created free energy, but the government squashed it and the corporations squashed it because they want people dependent on them for energy. And isn't that sad? That is the one component that could free our society, and it's been kept from us for decades, So 100 years ago, or we could have had free energy, and we could have been a lot further along in technologically speaking than we are now. So I think, inherent within you, I think you feel that you want to see our society be able to heal from its old karmic wounds from thousands of years of enslavement. So I think inherently you're seeing that step needs to come first before we implement the technology. So I think that there's maybe a reason why your higher self kept you from completing your engineering training, because you felt like, these people are too primitive. I need to reassess where I'm at, and go from there, So I do see that. I think you would be a very effective healer. I think the only thing that's keeping you back is yourself. You have a very clear understanding, especially being from Alpha Centauri, you have a very clear understanding the struggles that people are going through here. And I think you have, and you are Leo. I'm a Leo myself, so we both share that. I think you're able to pinpoint what's going on with a person and then being able to heal them of that. So I don't see why you couldn't continue, Reiki training or whatever, healing modality you wanted to go into. Actually seeing you going beyond Reiki. I think Reiki is going to be a good start for you, but I think just the simplistic aspect of it is going to frustrate you after a while, and you're going to go into wanting to go into something more advanced. So I see you maybe starting off with Reiki, but then moving towards maybe quantum healing or some higher level of energy healing. So I do see that. And it's interesting that being a healer is not really an Alpha Centaurian call. It's not like one of their gifts, but or typical gifts. But I do see you being able to do that, but integrating it in a more creative fashion. And I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like yet. I think maybe you might be able to heal people, maybe by that help them get in touch with nature, by maybe teaching them how to to plant a garden or something kind of simplistic like that. Since it's kind of related to some of the stuff you do now, but getting involved with helping teaching people how to build something. I think as humans here on Earth, we've lost the connection. I think even just basic survival skills, because I know myself, I think I feel my best when I'm out in my garden gardening. I don't know, it's just something about touching, being connected with plants and touching the soil and smelling the fresh air, So I see you getting very creative with your healing modalities, okay? Because you're kind of a person that thinks outside the box. I think you've always been that way. I think you've maybe held back from exploring some of these ideas that you had because you didn't feel safe to do that, or you felt like, oh, I don't want to, and it's common for all of us. I mean, we want to say, stay safe within our current societal norms, so I do see that I think you're going to kind of bust out a little bit in the next year or so, and I mean that in a very good way. I see probably what you're going to do is get the training you need in these different healing modalities that you're interested in, and then maybe taking on some clients, or maybe starting some social or some workshops or some social gatherings, maybe a meetup where people can get together and do things together. I know in Grand Junction you guys probably have a plethora of meetups already, but I know we do here in this Front Range area, but I see you maybe offering some workshops. You're a very good teacher. That's what your guides are telling me. You have a lot of patience. I think you have more patience with others than you do with yourself.
Oh, that's true. Yes.
Yeah. I think and that's kind of a Leo quality too, not just an Alpha Centaurian one. I think we hold ourselves to really high standards, and we want things that be done fast. But when it comes to working with others, we are much more patient with other people. We have compassion for people, so we kind of try to meet them where they're at. But with us, we hold ourselves to these really high standards, where we just have really, really high standards of where we want to be. I'm seeing that, actually, interestingly enough, you didn't have a lot of incarnations on Earth, okay? And I don't know if you felt that. Maybe 5 incarnations on Earth besides this one. And because, where we come from, when we get into the higher dimensions, there is no linear time. So we're just having these incarnations just to have these experiences. So there is no linear fashion sometimes to our incarnations. But I do see an Atlantis incarnation for you, okay? So you weren't there during the time of Atlantis. I think you were there more in its heyday and not when it was starting to fall. So you were there in Atlantis during the time that it was still, a very highly advanced society. They didn't quite get corrupted yet. So, and I'm seeing that you were doing some sort of technology in that incarnation. I'm seeing a builder of some sort. Actually, I'm seeing you're helping to build some of the floating cities in the ocean that they had. So they had like these floating cities. So you're helping to build the structures to help support that. Trying to check in on some other incarnations for you. Yeah, I'm seeing Rome. Okay, that's interesting. I'm also seeing kind of German. Okay. Is your ancestry German in this life, or?
Yes, partly.
Partly, and part Anglo, like Irish, or?
No, Norwegian, Finnish, German.
Interesting. Okay. Well, here's the genetic component to all this. Being Alpha Centaurian, the Alpha Centaurians were predominantly Nordics. Okay, they had Nordic genetics. Their race originated from Lyra. Your family genetics in this life, you're saying mostly Germanic and Scandinavian. Okay.
That's what I'm aware of. There might be others.
Yeah. So I am seeing that you chose to incarnate into the physicality that you're in because that was a good match for your soul DNA. You came from Alpha Centaurian, which is a Nordic / Lyran race, originally. Most of your Northern Europeans have genetics that came from Lyra, Pleiades, and Aldebaran and Alpha Centauri. So I think you felt comfortable incarnating into your current family group because they had the right genetics. That was a good match for your soul to incarnate into. Yeah, I see a Rome life though, and that definitely doesn't fit with your genetics at all. And I think maybe you weren't even Roman. I think you were a Roman citizen. You were actually not Italian or not from Rome originally. You were actually somebody that was captured as a slave in that life. but you managed to buy your freedom. So there's, kind of a very independent aspect to your soul that no matter what type of situation you're in, you're gonna attain freedom. So in that life, I'm seeing that you did get yourself integrated into the Roman society. You became a Roman citizen, and you owned property, which is interesting because you work with property in this life. You owned property, and I'm seeing that you didn't live in Rome. You lived, I think, in central Italy during the time. You were, and I'm seeing you were a man in this life, not a woman. I think in Atlantis you were a woman, but in this life you were a man. And you were able to, to get married, have a family, own property. And I'm seeing that you owned like a fruit orchard or fruit orchards or lemons. And so I think maybe some of the work that you were doing in this life was a fallback to what you were doing in that life, okay? Because you had to maintain the land, that was what you did. It was, I think, the lesson in that life was learning the human condition of slavery and learning how to get out of it. And you managed to do that for yourself. I don't know how you did it. I mean, but you managed to buy your freedom, which was really amazing. Actually, somebody that originated, I think, from Northern Europe that got captured and was brought to Rome as a slave. You worked as a slave for several years, but I think you managed to save your money and you finally bought your freedom. And unfortunately, you worked for a family that was a good Roman family. They were compassionate, and they felt like you deserved to have your freedom, so they allowed you to buy your freedom. So a lot of it was because of the family you worked for as well. But that was a very interesting life because you weren't even Roman in that life. You were just living in Italy. I'm seeing other lives was in Northern Europe. I do see a German life, and I think that was in after the Middle Ages, maybe around the Renaissance. I do kind of see a technological aspect to that life. I think you were doing some sort of engineering in that life, and you were a man in that life as well. I don't think you could have done engineering if you were a woman. Yeah, I think I see a Nordic connection there too. It's I think before the German life, you had a life as a Viking or in those Nordic races. Viking is kind of a misnomer. It actually applies. A lot of people just kind of apply it kind of to all Scandinavians, but they weren't all, marauding, warriors. There was, quite a few that lived very quiet lives in Scandinavia, and I'm seeing you were one of the ones. I think in that life you had a healing component. I'm seeing that you did you were like a shaman or doing some sort of healing work in that life. But very few lives on Earth. I mean, it was kind of you picked and chose different lives, I think, to have different experiences. But I think because you're Alpha Centaurian, you didn't really have the genetic components to be able to have mass amounts of lives on Earth, okay? And I'm in the same boat because our particular races were not directly involved with the Human Genome Project like the Syrians were. So you had to kind of pick and choose the lives you were in. I had to do the same. So I'm seeing kind of the lessons you were learning throughout these different lives was, I think, understanding what it was like to be an Earth human, and but being able to do that within certain family groups that you can incarnate into, and then taking those lessons and bringing them together in this life. And there is this ongoing theme of social equality and obtaining freedom for people. Do you have any questions for me so far, or is this kind of on track so far? Or,
it's definitely on track with both freedom and equality. There's no doubt about that. And even the technology, I get a lot of ideas and then don't know how to even sometimes start. Then I get frustrated with myself. And so I can see what you're talking about with the creative aspect and the technology, and I'm sort of moving towards ideas with crystals and plants as far as a healing space. I like architecture, and I like the idea of like communicating with nature and the elementals to help collaborate to make a healing space. I can feel energy and what it feels good and what doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do see you're going to utilize some of these engineering skills that you have, or just, this inventive aspect of you where you're going to create the space. And I think you have the means to do that where you're at. I mean, like some people, they tell me they have this idea, and I'm like thinking, you're going to have to go somewhere else. But your area is so high vibrational that I can see you doing something like that there. And I think it's just a matter of getting the funding and together. Do you and your husband own land in your area?
No, we live actually on the school property, so we're like the caretakers and we do everything.
Gotcha. Okay. Because obviously you would have to buy some property, or at least rent some property to be able to do what you're describing. So it would be a matter of manifesting, I guess, the funding to be able to do this. I see you starting off really small at first, like maybe doing like on a very small scale, like even if you had to rent some space, like like a house or something where you can do this, like a small little old Victorian house. It's in the right part of town, and or maybe even like an old farmhouse, something like that, where you can kind of retrofit it to create a healing space out of it, and then building your community from there. Yeah, I do see a lot of the social component of bringing people together. And I think you're going to be the one to start it all. I mean, I think you are a Leo, so you're somebody that has, really excellent leadership qualities, even though you probably don't think you do, but you do. And you have great ideas. And I think your husband is going to be able to help you bring those ideas into reality, just the two of you working on it together. I'm seeing that he's starseed as well, and I'm not sure from what star system. So I think a lot of what you came here to do was to help free humanity in this, and it's kind of a very broad way of putting it, but to do it more, maybe at first through one-on-one work with people. Because let's say if you were to go into QHHT, that is freeing people. I mean, that's a an excellent modality to do that, but also to help people expand outside of themselves through community projects, through community getting together, and creating a sacred space, or creating a space where people can really get in tune with nature, or get in tune with who they are, or get in tune with, maybe a way of finding a way to help others. So I see this kind of shifting and growing within the next few years, where you're going to start off with this really small scale idea, but then it's going to build and build and build and build. And at first, it's going to seem like the money is not going to be there. That's pretty common, especially in third dimensional reality. But then I do see that at some point you will be able to move forward, and the money will come. Somehow the money will come. Where you're going to start off kind of small. It's going to seem like, okay, why are we doing this? Doesn't not going anywhere. But then boom, you're going to start getting clients, and you're going to start getting people getting involved with things, and it's going to be like the money's going to just come in. And I know your husband will probably really like that. So
yeah, he won't have to work so hard.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so he'll probably really like that. So I do see that. I think the QHHT is the way to go for you, honestly. I think you should really consider that. It's going to be a lot of training, but I think you're up for that, and I think you have the analytical mind and the determination to do it. And even if you get to level 1, you can start taking on clients after you complete level 1 certification. So, and then just continue your training as you go along, so, and that's what I did with Akashic reading. Was I completed level 1 and I was already taking clients. I didn't, I went through level 2 and level 3. I was already taking clients after level 1, so I do recommend going through as many levels as you can, because it does help you become a better reader. and a better practitioner. So, and I'm sure QHHT is the same way. Yeah, I do see that happening for you. You do have spirit guides, okay? And the guides that I see for you are predominantly Alpha Centaurian, okay? You do have some Earth guides too, and I think that's to help anchor you to Earth. So, but I'm seeing mostly elementals as your Earth guides, okay? I'm not seeing like actual people. I'm seeing like elemental fairies, that sort of thing. I see Alpha Centauri. I would say about 5 guides that are your major guides, and I'm also seeing some angelic help as well. Archangel Gabriel. I think that's one of your guides. Actually, they're saying also Archangel Ariel. I'm not sure what those. I think our Archangel Gabriel is more about communication and transformation through communication. Ariel, I'm not really 100% sure, but I think she might be more connected with nature. I see this nature component with you and with your husband, that you're always going to be doing some kind of work outdoors. If it's, but it's going to be more maybe through this. I see you eventually leaving the school, your community, and for the people around you, being able to get people thinking in different directions. Yeah, I see the little spiritual center starting off really small, but it's going to grow. It's not going to grow really fast, but it's going to grow. I see you and your husband eventually moving towards, I think you'll stay in Grand Junction, but I think, moving towards having a more expanded this connection, this community connection, and I'm not sure what that looks like. Because I keep seeing that you and your husband are going to be recognized for some project that you're going to be doing, and I think it's a kind of a gardening kind of project, but it's something that's going to help the community. And I see your husband and you receiving an award for it, and I see like your idea will take off in other parts in Colorado initially. I don't know if you're going to stay on Earth next lifetime to continue the Earth Ascension project, the Earth integrating itself into fifth dimensional reality. I think that's an option for you. I think possibly you and your husband might choose to return to Alpha Centauri, because I think you're a little homesick because you've been here on Earth for a little while. So I think you might choose to go back. By that time, Earth will have, I think, if it goes into fifth dimensional reality, it will start having a relationship with other star people, okay? And I think one of the first star people they're going to start having relationships with is the Alpha Centaurians, because they're located so close to us. Right now, Earth cannot connect with the Alpha Centaurians because Earth is operating in third dimensional reality, and the Alpha Centaurians are in fifth dimensional reality, okay? So they have no way of communicating with each other, okay? So we need to get Earth up to speed so they start shifting and changing into fifth dimensional reality. Then, we'll be able to see Earth people be able to communicate telepathically and also interdimensionally with other star races. So the whole purpose of us being here right now is to help Earth become part of the greater galactic family. It's been separated for so long, and it's a shame because it didn't need to be this way, but it is, and I think we're going to get to a point where, Earth is just, it's either going to shift and change or it's not. We're working really hard to make sure it shifts and change, because that's its ultimate destiny, is to become part of this greater galactic family. So you and I, we're both doing our small part in this, to ensure that this happens. We're both doing it through, I would say, different healing practices, okay? I'm doing it predominantly through helping to awaken people and helping them to remember who they are and what they came here to do, okay? You're going to do it by actually healing people, okay? Healing them from their past wounds, disconnecting them from old traumatic baggage that's been ongoing forever and ever and ever. And also to help heal your community, to bring people together. So it's a big job, but I think you're up for it. I think your husband is. Like I said, you have a very analytical, inventive mind. That comes from your Alpha Centaurian heritage. So I hope that you will embrace that. I hope that it will be something that you will be able to embrace as a soul.
Yeah, I like the overview. It fits. It fit quite well. I guess my question about the analytical part is, do I need to study anything? I mean, I've sort of studied on my own the things I was interested in, sacred geometry, or I like sound frequencies, nature stuff, those kinds of things.
Right.
I don't really see myself going back to school. I mean, I'd love to go to school.
Right.
Because I like to learn, but I know that it's pretty limited what they teach. I feel like if I need to know something, then I'll just get the information.
I think the old world school model is going to be shifting and changing. I never felt a need to go back to school and get a master's or a PhD, because to me it just seemed meaningless. The information is now more readily available to all of us. We don't need to really go through formal training anymore like we did in the past. I don't see you going back to traditional school. I see you maybe getting some training in the healing modalities that you're interested in, and whatever adjunct training you want to add to that is up to you as well. But I don't see you necessarily going back to traditional school. I don't think you have a need to do that. I think the information is there, and I do see you maybe starting to receive some downloads of information. Maybe some old soul memories will start coming back for you, from your home star of origin. That's pretty common for folks after they have an Akashic reading, that they'll start getting downloads or even like some soul memories of what they used to do in their past off-world lives, or even maybe on-world lives. But yeah, I don't see you necessarily going back to school. I just see you probably taking some trainings here and there when you can, maybe the adjunct training, and maybe learning sound healing modalities. I do see you doing quite well with that. I think you'll do well with that one as well. Or getting some training in, maybe, symbology, or, I don't know, quantum mechanics, maybe, I don't know, just, just off the world stuff. You're kind of a quirky, you have Alpha Centaurians have kind of a quirky interest. So they kind of have this weird dichotomy of creativity with inventiveness with technology. So I see you probably, learning some things that most people probably wouldn't even think of learning, because that you just go wherever your interest is. If you find, an interest in quantum mechanics, you're going to go there, And so they have kind of a quirkiness about their personality, but it's part of what helps them, I think, be the unique souls that they are, that they can see things outside of the norm. And I think they do this a lot better than the Pleiadians. The Pleiadians are, I think sometimes they're a little too empathic, so they don't see much outside of the energy and the feelings that they feel coming in. Alpha Centaurians, they kind of go above that. They don't connect as well with the empathy, but they do connect well with receiving actual information that could help people in a more tangible sense. So that's the difference between you and, say, like a Pleiadian starseed, or somebody maybe from Sirius, So, and I think we need all types of souls here to help Earth get to where it needs to go. Thank you so much for allowing me to facilitate this reading for you today. It was great joy to get to know another fellow Colorado sisters. And I wish you a lot of love and success for both you and your husband on this journey.
I said we're probably being prepared for a huge project, honey. And thank you for the clarity.